Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming in the rain. We appreciate it so much. Let's go ahead and get started. Yep, great. Thank you so much. I am really excited for today's AI Plus Careers. We have a really special speaker joining us today. And thank you all for taking time out of your very busy day to have this conversation with us. I'm Diana Gelhaus. I'm a director for economy here at SCSP. For those of you who are not familiar with SCSP, welcome to the family. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tech-first special project. And we are really focused on the techno-economic strategic competition and thinking about policies that are going to help us maintain our standing as an innovation power and make sure that we are leading in terms of AI and other battleground technologies here and abroad. So we, as part of that effort, think workforce is a key pillar of national security and economic competitiveness. And we've designed a line of programming that's really getting after the heart of some of our greatest challenges as we are learning about how to integrate AI into the fabric of our economy and society. And AI Plus Careers is a monthly series that's designed to ask some of the most topical questions that's on all of our minds about all things jobs, all things future of work, and AI. I am so excited to welcome Felipe Millon here today from OpenAI to ask a whole range of questions about all things AI Plus Careers in our Just Friends setting. And for those online, please do feel free to put your questions in the chat. We're going to do this in two parts. I'll ask a few questions up front, then we'll open it up to the group for more questions and conversation. And afterwards, we'll continue with networking outside. So my first question, instead of doing a long biographical reading, I'd love to hear your AI Plus Careers journey.
Yeah.
So welcome. Thank you again for joining us. Can you tell us about your AI Plus Career story, how you got to where you are, and why you're working in this space?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, and great to see a bunch of folks here. So Felipe Millon, it's great to meet everyone in the room. I today lead our government go-to-market team at OpenAI. So at OpenAI, working with governments as customers, so specifically US federal, as well as state and local governments and others in the public sector on the adoption of OpenAI tools, mainly ChatGPT and our ChatGPT Enterprise product, as well as our API. Started my career journey off by studying engineering. So it was industrial and systems engineering undergrad and master's. Actually, one fun story I'll tell is I went to Florida State for undergrad. And I'd always said I was going to go get a master's degree. And this kind of talks a little bit about pivoting and just being opportunistic, which is kind of a theme in my career journey, as you'll hear. But I was in Tallahassee, was graduated. I had actually gotten accepted to go to Duke for a one-year engineering management master's program. And so I was looking for an internship between the summer of like my senior year. I'd graduated, starting my master's program. Roommate of mine and friend said, hey, I've worked at Lockheed Martin for the last 5 internships in a row every summer since high school. Come talk to them. They're a great place to work. So I went to go talk to the recruiter, and I was like, hey, I'm looking for an internship. And she's like, but you're a senior, you're graduating. Why are you looking for an internship and not a full-time job? I told her I'm going to go get my master's. And she said, well, why don't you come work for us and we'll pay for your master's? And I took a pause. I did not know that was a thing that existed at the moment. And said, tell me more. And so she told me more about the program. I immediately went back and started researching master's programs that were taught in Orlando, where the job offer was. And I found out that the University of Florida had an outreach engineering management program where they taught 1 week in a month in Orlando, Saturday and Sundays, and then a bunch of remote classes in between. Applied to that program. At least at the time, I was the only person that had ever accepted pending graduation, because I still hadn't graduated from my undergrad, because it was designed for working professionals. But was able to do that. So started working at Lockheed Martin, got a master's while working in systems engineering. And then along the way, I started working as an industrial engineer, joined an operations leadership program. I got another serendipitous moment. Another colleague from one of these leadership programs reached out to me and she's like, hey, I heard you went to Duke. I just got into their MBA program. And I was like, no, I didn't. And I think they thought that I had gone because I had done that master's program and someone had told the story. And I was like, well, what MBA program are you talking about? Tell me more. And she was like, Duke has this program called the Cross Continent MBA program. It's designed for working professionals. You travel everywhere around the world every 2 months to a different region around the world, and you do online classes in between. And Lockheed would pay for it as part of this leadership program that we're in. And so I immediately applied. I had not even graduated from my master's in engineering program. And so I had graduated like in that spring, and then in the fall started at Duke and got my MBA through Duke, which is a phenomenal program. We traveled all over, and then ended up working at Lockheed Martin. We moved to, I was in Orlando. I moved to Bethesda, worked at their corporate headquarters for a while, did engineering strategy, corporate strategy, a bunch of different works in engineering, and finished my MBA program. I had been doing that for a while, and I thought I might want to do something outside of the defense space. And my wife actually got a phenomenal career opportunity in Los Angeles. She worked for Macy's and got a promotion to become a VP out there. And so I was like, you know what? I might want to do something different. Let's go. So I quit completely, and they offered me a job in LA. I was like, I'll find something else. And we moved to LA, and I posted my resume on Indeed.com without even to a specific job post. And I got a call an hour later from a recruiter from a company called McMaster Car Supply Company. Industrial supplier, sold screws, nuts, and bolts. Some of you might know them from the giant yellow catalog they have. And moved to LA and got a job working at an industrial supplier and helping run an export call center, and then running their warehouse for a bit. And did pretty well. I got promoted to become a regional manager, managing kind of marketing and customer accounts. And then my wife got pregnant, and we said, you know what, it's time to get back to South Florida, where we both grew up and where family was. So we moved back to South Florida. And along the way, I saw a very vague job posting for Amazon that had this job opening in Miami. But at the time, Amazon had no offices, no warehouses, no corporate headquarters, no presence in South Florida whatsoever. I called a friend from my MBA program, and I was like, hey, what's this job? I'm interested. He's like, I have no idea, but I'll refer you. Referred me to this job. I went through 7 rounds of interviews having no idea what the job was. So they're like, it's a new initiative we're launching. We'll tell you more about it as you go through the process. But right now, just interview as a general manager position. And so I went through this entire round of interview, having zero idea what the job was, which was a very surreal experience. And ultimately, at the end, got a job offer. And when I was finally in Seattle for a final round of interviews, they told me it was Prime Now. So what would become Prime Now, the ultra-fast delivery business. They're about to launch in New York. Miami was going to be the second city to launch, and so they needed someone to kind of help launch the Miami city. So I joined Amazon. This is about 9 years ago now, and started working at Amazon as a general manager for Prime Now. And then later on, we merged with Amazon Fresh. And so it's kind of very much in the retail side of Amazon. And then another story I'll tell is I'd got my MBA in finance, and when you work at Amazon, if anyone here works or has friends that work there, a lot of your compensation is in restricted stock units and RSUs. So a lot of my comp was in Amazon stock. So I was a big shareholder, and I would read the news, I would read the 10K, and I would watch the quarterly reports and hear all the analyst earnings. And while I was there, Amazon broke out AWS for the first time. So all of a sudden, this little AWS line item got broken out. And here at the time, Amazon Web Services, for those who might not be familiar, and at the time, it was an $8 to $10 billion business, growing 60 to 80% year over year with like 60% margins. And I was a general manager of Prime Now, and I owned the P&L of Prime Now. And Prime Now is an ultra-fast delivery service that delivers in an hour, an everyday consumable, which are single-digit margin items. So when I say I own the P&L, I own the L, and it was a very big L. And I'm trying to like make it less of an L. And so I was looking at my P&L, and then I saw this AWS line item, and I was just like, what is this? Like, what is this AWS thing, and why is it growing so fast, and how is it so incredibly profitable? And I started learning about cloud computing. I had done technical work at Lockheed, and I was very technical, but it was more in like systems engineering, never in like IT. And so I started learning more about what was happening in technology, what was happening with cloud computing, and the move from on-prem to the cloud. Similar networking story. I called an old friend from business school who was at AWS, and I said, tell me what you're doing. Tell me about this thing. And he talked to me about AWS. He said, hey, we actually launched this new certification program. So I went and got certified in AWS. And then he's like, and we have a bunch of job openings. He connected me with the hiring manager and was able to move to a role doing federal sales for AWS. And so that's what brought me back to the DC area again. So I came back to the DC. This is about 6 years ago now, 7 years ago. Came back to AWS and was doing program management for about a year, 6 months to a year. And then I saw that all the salespeople were having all the fun. And I said, you know what? I could do that. And so I moved into a sales role. So I'd never been a kind of field seller. but jumped into a sales role and started managing customer relationships in the federal financial space. So working a lot in the housing and mortgage space. So like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac or HUD. And was pretty successful. We had a really good business there. Got promoted to become the sales manager for over several of the areas. And then November of 2022 happened, and like many of you I'm sure know, and ChatGPT came out. And it blew my mind, like it did much of the world. And similar, I had that same moment I had when AWS, where I was like, how is this working? What is going on here? And my wife will tell you, I became completely obsessed. Started reading every single paper I could on Archive about how large language models work, every single post that all these different AI bloggers had about kind of videos and understanding and try to train these models of what was happening, and just started learning more about it. And ultimately, within my role at Amazon, started saying, how can I do more in this space? And so actually helped found the AWS Public Sector Task Force. We started working around like, how does this going to apply to AWS? Got very familiar with all the AWS tools, familiar with Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q and all the things that they were building, and started working very deep. And I had made a decision, I'm going to go into AI, either within Amazon or elsewhere, but I was looking first at Amazon. Last quick story, and then I'll we can shift gears, but another fun one is, so I was going, this is fall of last year, I was going to New York for a work trip. And does anyone know, I know a couple of people know Ali Miller, does that seem familiar? She's an AI influencer. So a couple of people know the name.
Yeah.
So I followed her on LinkedIn. She's ex-Amazon and now just posts about, so in my learning about AI and finding Ali and just like reading everything she was putting out. And I was going to New York and I happened to sit down on the train, and Ali Miller sits down right next to me in the assigned seat on the Acela. And I was just like, that's Ali Miller. And I didn't know her. And I like kind of looked over and she was posting something on LinkedIn. So she posted something. I looked at my phone like, yep, she just posted that. I was like, hey, you're Ali. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, in a non-creepy way, I follow you. And we just hit it out. We spent the next 3-hour train ride just talking about AI and Amazon experiences and what was happening and where we thought Amazon strategy was great, where they were falling behind, what was happening, and all over the place. Then we just stayed in touch. And so I saw her at like a conference or two a couple months later. And then one day out of the blue, she just pings me and says, hey, I have a lot of friends at OpenAI. They're about to open up a role for someone to lead federal sales at OpenAI. And your name came to mind. Are you interested? I said, of course. And no, so here I am. So that was, 7 months ago or so. Joined pretty quickly, and I've been at OpenAI now for about 6 months, leading their government sales. So anyways, very long with this.
No, that's such a fun story. But that's I hear so many things that will never go out of style: adaptability, curiosity, flexibility, just entrepreneurship. And I think that's going to come up several times throughout this conversation. So thanks for sharing your story. I want to level set a little bit. And this gets into some of the work you're doing now at OpenAI. There's been a few announcements recently about some new products that have come online. It's really exciting to watch all of the advancements that OpenAI is making and deploying at scale. Do you think that we are at a critical moment when it comes to AI and the potential impact on the economy, on society, on national security? And if so, why?
Yeah. Short answer is yes. Clearly I'm very biased here. I voted with my feet and like put my career in, like thinking that we're in such a big moment. It's the reason why I kind of had decided like I'm going to be in this space, whether it was at Amazon, whether it was somewhere else, and whether it happened to, find this awesome opportunity at OpenAI. And so the short answer is absolutely. Sam Altman, our CEO, has said a couple of times in public that ChatGPT had a moment where it's awakened, like the world's kind of the world is now like knows what is like what's coming in, what's AI to a certain extent. But he does say it hasn't had a super material impact on like global GDP, for example, if you want to take that. So maybe in like the single digit, very low, if that, in terms of kind of what generative AI today is impacting global GDP. If you think about kind of all GDP and like what's being impacted, it's still pretty small today. And one of the things he says is that's not going to be the case, right? These next small, the reason that one of the reasons there's so much hype around AI today is because of not only of what it can do today and kind of be a general purpose technology in many ways, but really is the trend lines we see, right? And a lot of this, and what OpenAI really pioneered was this thing called the scaling laws, you might have heard, which meant that, we train these large language models as kind of the foundation. But, the idea of a transformer was actually invented at Google in 2017, 2016, and published 2017. And then OpenAI and others realized, hey, we can train these large language models. But what OpenAI realized much earlier on than anyone else is that I could continue to scale the training of these models with more data and more compute, and that would lead to better results. And people kind of saw the initial scaling laws and they said, okay, maybe there's a little bit there. But we said, keep it going, like as much as you can. And so these models, again, if measured the number of parameters or something, are much, much larger. So the big thing, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about why I'm going to have the potential you allude to is we don't see an end to the scaling laws yet. And that's why you hear rumors of, trillion-dollar data centers and data centers powered by nuclear power plants. I mean, it's just the scale of what people see of I can continue to get benefit is extremely large. And that's why, one of the reasons why I think there. That being said, that also then ties to like what I'll call algorithmic improvements, which is what we follow OpenAI closely, what we released last week, which is our O1 series of models, our O1 preview and our O1 mini model, which are a little bit of a different, which is algorithmic improvement and training these models to think a little bit more. We can talk more about that. But really the big thing was like these scaling laws. And so now you're having both rising at the same time. And I think that just the fact that also these are general purpose technologies. So we use the term GPTs for our models, generative pre-trained transformer models. A lot of people in economics say you stole that term because GPT in economics stands for general purpose technologies. But we wrote a great paper, a couple of people within OpenAI, where they she said GPTs are GPTs. And so it's a whole paper about how these GPT models are actually a general purpose technology. And the idea that, when machine learning was, 10 years ago, you wanted to train a machine learning model to identify a cat in a picture. It was a very different model you trained than the same model that you wanted to write poetry for you. GPT-4o does both. It can identify cats and write poetry and do data analysis and, create. So it's this idea of this general purpose technology of now applying many fields is where there's so much now amazing opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And I think new estimates are coming out all the time. I just saw one today from IDC, a market intel company, that said the economic potential of AI could be almost 20 trillion by 2030. And it was a really fascinating report, actually. But where do you think this is a large ecosystem? You mentioned energy, which is a huge factor, right? Senator Rounds just came out today and his team said, we have to get ahead of this, the energy challenge. Where do you see OpenAI over the next 6 months, 12 months, 3 years in AI advancement?
Yeah, it's funny. Sam just did a special with Oprah last week. I don't know if anyone caught that. It was kind of a general, and she asked the question about what do you see in the next 5 years? She's like, it's so hard to predict what's going to happen even in the next year. But I do think that you'll see us and others continue to invest in scaling models, right? So I think you're going to see the scaling of models. You're going to see the continued scaling of algorithmic improvements, like kind of our O1 model series. And we even shared that what we released last Thursday is O1 preview. Is not even as good as the O1 model that we still have and are doing additional safety testing. So I think there's definitely these models are just going to get more and more powerful. And not just from us, there's other players in this field. But I do believe we will continue to see more and more powerful models. I think we're going to continue to see more adoption. There's a lot of people that say, and I fully agree with this, if we paused all AI development today, we would still have 5 to 10 years of this technology being infused into processes and things like we're nowhere near of just today's capacity of if we had just this, that we could do so much more and become so much more productive with it. But these models are going to get even better on top of that. And so it's so I think those are a couple of things. We'll see the models improve. We'll see adoption continue to improve as people see the benefits and others adopting the benefits. And so as you see kind of, if you think about just the traditional technology adoption lifecycle and the early movers, and there's the idea of a chasm, how do you cross the chasm? If someone you have may have read that book, and then you get the early majority, the late majority, and so I think we're very much now in the majority starting to realize we need to do something here, right? The fact that my mother, who is not technology savvy in any way, shape, or form, or my father even more so, now uses ChatGPT to help him write business emails because he's a Spanish language speaker first, lives in Miami and does most of his business with like South American cargo airlines. And he is now he would usually call me and my sister and my brother and ask us to help proofread an email he had to send to the FAA. Now he uses ChatGPT. He writes it in Spanish and asks ChatGPT to give it to him, right? So I think we're going to start seeing more adoption, and then you're just going to see the capabilities that are designed in these models that continue to improve. So that's that. Then you're going to just see these models get infused into every single technology out there. So this is, it's a moment where you're going to be an AI, as individuals, will be an AI first consumer. So using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude with Anthropic, et cetera. So you'll be a consumer of an AI tool, but then you're going to be a consumer of other tools that you use today that are just going to have AI in it, whether that be now Apple's new Apple Intelligence, and it's now embedded into your Photos app and your email, to video conferencing, doing automatic transcripts and searching it and summarizing. So every single other party is going to start embedding AI into their tool or service as well. So you're going to see kind of that proliferation of AI everywhere. And one of the things we've said with the O1 release, and when we talk to customers about it, is what we think it really means is that we're going to see AI in more places faster than we thought it was going to happen. So I think even more so like last week than, obviously, and we knew for a little bit behind before that, but now with kind of this O1 series of models, we think we'll see it even faster adoption and even more places than we thought it would be.
And it's fascinating how that continuously seems to be catching people by surprise, especially economists who were, I think, shocked by how quickly AI as a capability accelerated in terms of design and development and deployment, and continues to really proliferate. And you really touched on something important here. There are far-reaching implications, back to econ jargon, for producers and consumers, and both of those pieces have pretty significant potential impacts for the future of work. I want to just quickly start on the producer side. You mentioned integration or embedding AI-enabled tools or capabilities into a lot of business processes, operations across industries. You also have said in the past that all companies in the future will be an AI company, just like all companies now are mobile companies. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I love that saying. It's something we say a lot because I think today, if you follow Silicon Valley and where money's flowing, venture capital, everybody is a .ai company. I forget. I think it's like is it Angola that owns the rights? There's a country that owns the rights to .ai. It's actually making a ton of money because all these startups are trying to buy the domain .ai. Antigua, I think it's Antigua that owns it. So every company in the Valley right now is immediately pitching themselves as an AI company. There's a bunch of memes out there that said like all these crypto companies like immediately overnight were like now AI companies. But it's really like the idea of like this is where the money's flowing. Everyone's trying to capitalize